The state is also one step closer to making sure Mainers who want it can have a fast, affordable internet connection.
That's right. The Maine Connectivity Authority has earned a new federal grant worth $30 million to fund 530 miles of middle mile infrastructure. Those are regional fiber optic lines that can carry large amounts of data at high speeds over long distances to provide internet connectivity to homes and businesses.
The 530-mile route crosses 131 communities, passing more than 11,000 unserved houses and businesses. This grant will help more than 200 institutions like schools, libraries, hospitals, civic centers, and local government buildings.
MooseNet and the partnership approach allows for us to think about, well, how are we allowing for more diverse pathways of the internet to be distributed throughout the state? And how can we maintain that to ensure public benefit and to ensure that we are increasing the options of service and hence the affordable options to homes and businesses throughout the state.
Maine's proposal was one of 32 selected from a pool of more than 260 applications.